G'day guys, how are we? Welcome back to the Boxing Deep Dive channel. And in this episode, I'm going to jump into the very, very dangerous waters of the Australian top 10 pound for pound list. Haven't done this for a few months, so I thought I would do it just in the wake of Tim Tszyu's recent win, Jai Pataya's recent win, a fair bit going on. A fair few boxers actually have to fight toward the end of this year. So we might do an updated one maybe in December or whatever, but still to fight this year, Rowan Murdoch, Parro, maybe Michael Zerafa, Sam Goodman. So there's a fair bit still going on with it, and some female boxers as well. I haven't done that a list in this episode because most of the top girls haven't been overly busy this year, so I might wait till the end of the year to do that one. Of course, Ebony Bridges and Sky Nicholson with fights coming up. So as I said, in this episode, I'll only be the male top 10, and look, it's just my opinion. I'm sure a lot of you out there will have your own opinions what's going on. There's some notable omissions is what I will say. And I will say, the other thing I will say is that it's just like a really, really difficult thing to do. And I implore you to try it yourself, because do you go by a resume? Do you go by recent form, which I think you should? Or do you go by just natural talent? And you'll understand what I'm getting at as we go through the list with the honourable mentions versus the ones that actually did get into the list. It's very, very difficult to do because there's so many intangibles you have to keep in mind when you do these lists. But sometimes you just have to go with gut feel, and that's what I've done in this one. So we'll start at number 10 and work our way down to number 1. And the top 4, I tell you, was extremely, extremely tough, as was probably probably 7 to 10, I suppose. So, but as I said, just my opinion. And we'll start at number 10, and at the end I'll have the honourable mentions and a little bit of explanation of why I've chosen to go down the track that I have. So let's start with number 10. This was a really hard one to do. I've gone with Rowan Murdoch, IBF number 9. He's 27-2. 19 KOs. Now, Rowan hasn't been overly active in the last few years, but he did get on track in his last fight with a really hard-fought, quality win over Isaac Harbin. It was a really good fight. There was a little bit of conjecture about the winner in that fight. I think Rowan Murdoch did do enough to get past Isaac Harbin, even though it was a great fight. And as I said, it was a really tough one to throw Rowan Murdoch in there, because if it hadn't been for the Isaac Harbin win, I'm not quite sure he would have surpassed some of the others' honourable mentions that I'll get to later. So, look, he has got a big fight coming up in January in Quebec, which could lead to a world title shot. So, just on the back of the Isaac Harbin fight and a little bit of his resume, so like 27-2. He's got the runs on the board compared to a few of the others who have been a little bit inactive or probably haven't had the same amount of quality opponents as Rowan Murdoch. So, I've got Rowan Murdoch number 10. On to number 9. Let's get on to him. That is Liam Parro, 23-0, 14 KOs. Now, Liam was actually ranked a fair bit higher in some of my earlier rankings that I did earlier in the year. The problem is he hasn't fought for, I think it's a year now, since he beat Brock Jarvis via first-round knockout. Now, he has got a big fight coming up on the Devin Haney Regis Prograis card, December 9. He'll take on Montana Love. So that's a really good opportunity for him to get back into the rankings. He was number 1 with the WBO for a long time, was very, very close to getting a shot at the WBO title. Then, of course, he did land the fight with Prograis for the WBC title, and unfortunately had to pull out with an injury. So that would have been a massive opportunity for him. But just by the inactivity, I was just the only place I could probably sneak him in was to number 9. And I'm sure that especially if he beats Montana Love, of course, I'm sure he'll go up in the rankings. But at the moment, I did sort of slip him down the rankings to number 9, and I'm sure he will progress, as I said, if he gets that win over Montana Love and some big fights out there for him. Maybe it's a Haney Prograis winner. We'll see. On to number 8, and this was another difficult one. I'm sure this will perplex a lot of you guys out there. I've gone for Michael Zerafa, WBA number 1, WBO number 5. 31-4, 19 KOs. Another one that's been very, very inactive. Now, Michael's had 4 fights in 4 years, but since the loss to Jeff Horn at the end of 2019, had the win over Anthony Mundine. Let's forego that one. Had another tune-up fight over the Fijian, but he did get the win over Isaac Harbin with a very impressive second-round KO. Backed it up with the win over Daniel Creati. Hasn't done much again for almost a year now. So there is rumours he'll be on the December 9 card at the MGM Grand. It'll feature Danny Garcia, Erizandi Lara, and Keith Thurman and Aminiatis Staniotis. I think that's how you pronounce it. And maybe Floyd Mayweather on that card as well. So no mention or no confirmation just yet he'll be on that card. But again, I've gone for his body of work. As I said, 31-4, 19 KOs. World ranked by the two organisations there. Was actually number one with the IBF as well, and lost that ranking when he decided to go down the WBA route. Of course, famously stepped aside for Lara and Garcia to fight. But let's see what happens with Michael. But again, another one that's probably slipped down a little bit in my recent, or compared to my recent rankings. But at number 8, I think he's done enough to stay in the top 10 compared to maybe some of the others that have also probably been a little bit inactive. Number 7, I've gone with Liam Wilson, WBO number 2, 12-2, 7 KOs. He's got a big fight coming up again against Jackson John England in early December. So another chance for him to solidify his position, get a world title shot. I'm not quite sure whether they see it as a tune-up. I certainly don't. Jackson John England's very capable, but I'm sure they wouldn't take that fight if they weren't sure that Liam could get the win. But as I said, WBO number 2, of course, he lost in very controversial fashion to Emmanuel Navarrete earlier in the year. And this is a good chance for him to get back amongst it. I'm pretty sure he's probably around the mark that he was last time I did my rankings. But at this stage, I've got him at number 7. A little bit of movement in the next few rankings. At number 6, I've got Andrew Maloney, the former WBA Super Flyweight champion, 25-3, 16 KOs, of course, coming off a devastating knockout loss to Hunto Nakatani in Las Vegas on the Haney Lomachenko undercard. He has got a fight lined up, from what I'm told, to be in early December as well. And I'm sure he'll progress from there in maybe a potential world title fight in 2024. But again, just by his resume, WBA Super Flyweight champion, and with a 25-3, 16 KO record, I think more than justifies his number 6 position. Because even though he's coming off that knockout loss, I think he's done enough to maintain it compared to some of his contemporaries in the Australian scene. Number 5. This is a guy that's sort of gone up in the last, compared to my last couple of ratings. This is Sam Goodman. And I think the time to ignore Sam Goodman is over. I think I've had him at 6 or 7 in the last few rankings anyway. But now, number 5, he's gone past Andrew Maloney. He's ranked number 1 by the WBO and IBF. Had a great win on the Zooo Mendoza undercard with that decision win over Miguel Flores. He's 16-0, 7 KOs. And with a bullet. Now, he's going to back up in early December, by all reports, on a pay-per-view here in Australia. And no doubt in 2024, this guy will be fighting for a version of the world title, either WBO or IBF. There's talk that it might be Naoya Inoue. He's a brave man getting in the ring with Inoue. But at the end of the day, this is what these guys get out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning or earlier and run and dedicate hours per day putting in the craft in boxing. This is what they do it for, and good luck to Sam Goodman if and when he gets that shot. Now, on to the top 4. Now, this is it's a very, very hard thing to do, and I'm sure it will be contentious to a few of you out there, and I think this order could be all over the place, especially maybe the top 2 or 3, but we'll start with number 4. I've gone with Jason Maloney, the WBO World Bantamweight champion. Of course, won that earlier in the year with a decision win over Vincent Astrolabio. He's 26-2, 19 KOs. It was his 3rd crack at the world title, and I was lucky enough to be at ringside. It was a great night for Australian boxing to be there to see Jason win that world title. But I know a lot of you out there will probably have him maybe 1 or 2 spots higher, or maybe even higher than that. But I've gone for him at number 4 at this stage. Number 3. I have George Kambosos Jr., of course, the former unified and ring lightweight world champion, current IBO lightweight champion. Had the, we'll say the controversial win over Maxie Hughes earlier in the year. He's 21-2, 10 KOs. Now, I know the IBO is not recognised as one of the big 4 or the big belts out there, but at the end of the day, he has got a version of it. and it was very, very tough to go past Jason Maloney, I will say, but I'll explain a little bit more of that at the end of the ranking. So number 3, George Kambosos. Now the number 1 and 2, again, I'm sure we'll have a lot of discussion out there amongst you guys and girls. I've gone for Tim Zooo at number 2. He's the WBO Super Welterweight Champion, 24-0, 17 KOs. Of course, coming off the decision win over Brian Mendoza. He was, what's the best word? Not gifted it or handed it, but he was installed as a WBO Super Welterweight Champion by no fault of his own. Jamel Charlo has been, I'm not going to say avoiding Tim. That's a pretty harsh word, but for whatever reason, these two haven't been able to fight. All on Charlo's side. I will say Tim has no blame whatsoever for the fight not happening. But at the end of the day, Charlo's gone up. The WBO awarded Tim Zooo the belt, and he solidified that last weekend with that great win over Brian Mendoza. So fully fledged WBO Super Welterweight or 154-pound champion is Tim Zooo, which brings us to number 1. I have Jai Opetaia, the current IBF Cruiserweight World Champion, 23-0 with 18 KOs. Now, very, very difficult to separate Jai and Tim. The reason I've gone with Jai is because he beat an absolute beast of the division in Marius Briedis. Of course, Briedis' only loss was a very, very close loss to Alexander Usyk, the current heavyweight champion. So I've gone for that, just over Tim, who hasn't had that Charlo fight yet. Now, if he had fought and beat Charlo, I would have him at number 1. But sometimes you've just got to balance the scales. And I've gone with Jai just based on that win over Marius Briedis. And his first defense against Jordan Thompson, I think, was just as impressive as any of Tim's recent wins as well. So that's why I've got Jai at number 1. But I'm going to say I would have no drama at all, and I would not argue the point if any of you guys and girls out there had Tim number 1 and Jai number 2, or even Jason or George. I think these two especially, I think it's got to be either one of these, 1 or 2. Now, the honourable mentions, and you're probably wondering why some of these aren't in there. Stevie Sparks, probably maybe one of the most obvious ones. He's 16-3, 14 KOs. Look, and I'm sure, again, there'll be some of you out there that'll say he deserves to be in there over a Rowan Murdoch or a Liam Parro. Look, the reason I haven't got Steve Spark in there, and I know a lot of facts and figures will be thrown at me, the reason I haven't got him in there is purely because the only real legitimate high-profile, if you want to call it, win of his career has been by disqualification over Montana Love. Now, I know the argument might come that, well, he was winning anyway and he would have done this. But at the end of the day, I'm a big fan of Stevie Spark, don't get me wrong, but the facts of the matter are he won that fight by disqualification. So you've got no choice but to put a asterisk beside it. I think, having said that, he did get ripped off in his last fight. I think 100% he won that fight, so maybe that balances out. But the opposition wasn't exactly upper echelon. So I've just gone for Murdoch and Parro and Zerafa and Wilson over Stevie Spark, purely because, as I said, his only real solid win of his career was a disqualification win. Now, whether he would have won that or not, we will never know. But he is one with a asterisk, or maybe even 2 asterisks beside his name. So no disrespect to Stevie Spark, but I just can't put him above those other guys. The other 2 that I had on my list, and I was very tempted to put them in, based purely on ability alone. And that's where you've got to balance it up between hardcore achievements and portfolios and resumes, whatever you want to call it, based on pure ability. And they don't get in purely because of just the amount of fights that they've had. And the 2 I'm referring to, Paulo Acuso. This guy on ability is probably in the top number 5 of this list. He is a sensationally super talented fighter. He's 6-0 with 3 KOs. And as I said, I was very, very tempted, just based on those 6 fights alone, to put him above a couple of these guys, maybe, as I said, Murdoch or Parro or Zerafa. But I think that would be an insult to those guys who'll build a really good resume and haven't really done anything wrong to be turfed out of the top 10. So Paulo Acuso was definitely one. And the other one was Justice Honey, 7-0, 4 KOs. Again, a super talented fighter. I've got no doubt he's going to be in big fights in the future, just like Akuso will be. But just at this stage, he's been very inactive as well. He has got a fight planned, of course, on October 28th against Anthony Tabiti. So if he wins that, maybe he will go a little bit further based on a few other results. But just at this stage, Huni with only 7 fights, Akuso only 6 fights. I think it would be, as I said, a bit of a slap in the face to some of those other guys that have put in the work over the years. So there it is. So let's just run through them again. Number 10, I had Rowan Murdoch. Number 9, I'll just put them up as we go through. So I had number 10, Rowan Murdoch. Number 9, Liam Parro. Number 8, Michael Zerafa. Number 7, Liam Wilson. Number 6, Andrew Maloney. Number 5, Sam Goodman. Number 4, Jason Maloney. Number 3, George Kambosos. Number 2 was Tim Zooo. And number 1 was Jai Apatai. Now, just a couple of other explanations there. I explained, obviously, Jai and Tim. I went with George above Jason between 3 and 4. Again, I wouldn't argue with anyone that would have him the other way around. It just, again, comes down. I think they're on a very, very even keel as far as where the standings are in the world scene at the moment. But at the end of the day, George Kambosos, former Unified and Ring magazine lightweight champion. And I know his last performance wasn't overly great against Maxie Hughes, but it doesn't matter what you thought of the performance. He still won. And he's still got the belt. Jason's was an unbelievable performance over Astrolabio as well. And look, again, a flip of the coin job. It really was. And I wouldn't, again, argue with anyone that had it the other way around. So I think looking at it, as I said, you might have either Jai or Tim 1 and 2 around and George and Jason 3 and 4 around. I'm not sure. But I think what we can all agree on is the top 4, no matter where you've got him in the order, it is what it is. I think I've got that right. And I'm pretty sure Sam Goodman's done enough to go past Andrew Maloney now, as I said before, coming off a loss. But apart from that top 6, Andrew Maloney, of course, being number 6, I don't think you can make a case of any of the other guys. So Liam Wilson, Michael Zerafa, Liam Parro, and especially Rowan Murdoch for being past Andrew Maloney or down. So there it is, guys. That's my top 10. Let me have it. I'm a big boy. I can cop the comments, but as I said, just be mindful and tasteful of your list. That it's only an opinion, and we've all got one. And I'm very keen to hear your opinions. Put it in the comments below. Your 1 to 10, and maybe someone else. Maybe I've missed. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head. I think I've got it right. But what do you think? Let me know, and we'll see you next time we do the Australian top 10. Thanks.